Good morning. Ooh, I had my agenda up over here. Hope everybody's doing the general break in Arctic blast temps. It was a little warm yesterday.
It was very warm.
Back to skiing weather, ideal skiing weather though, so I'm all right with that. And yeah, I'm just going to jump into updates because I've kind of likened this bi-weekly meeting, but that means stuff happens. One thing is I know that the RFP for the audit has been live, and Carrie has fielded a couple questions, but I don't know if you want to say too much on that, but other than people are seeing it, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only update is that I don't think I can post it on the website that you sent, Carter, unless you have some kind of in. I don't think I can like claim ownership of the city, or I'm struggling to. And I called 3 numbers on that website that are all out of service. So I don't know who like has ownership of this website at this point. I might try again today and poke around more. But anyway, I got it posted on the VLCT site, and then we sent out like some targeted mailers and email. We got like one like official no, just based on our size, basically. And then one was kind of like, okay, can you let me know if you're not happy with any of your options, like closer to the due date, and then we'll bid. Essentially, was kind of reading between the lines what I received.
That's an interesting approach.
And then I got one just like interested firm from out of state, which Chip, I was trying to read between the lines on your email, which I think you're saying basically don't continue the conversation just because it's going to be a pricey thing with it being out of state. Is that correct?
Well, the certification for them in the state of Vermont as auditors probably doesn't exist. And that simply a firm out of Chicago deciding to apply for an RFP in the state of Vermont, Northeast Kingdom, I just think by nature, their price range is not even going to be close.
That's what I figured you were getting at. So I can send them like a nice like thanks, but
the items that I listed for each of their requests, you can send it, but I just think by the time you get a 50-page proposal that's nicely put together, the bottom line price is going to be $100,000.
So just let them continue, or do you suggest kind of shutting it down? Because I don't want to waste anybody's time, obviously, but
I would
do
let
one option.
I'm sorry. I would, you need the outliers. You need the, and we don't know what's going on there internally. They could be saying, hey, we're going to put a push into the Northeast.
Yeah. I'll continue with them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I gave answers to all of their questions in a responding email to you.
Yeah, I think you did. I just paused at the part where you were like, this is out of state. I was like trying to read between the lines of what you meant by that, and was like, I'll ask him on this call. So it's all good.
Carrie, can you tell us who the no was from?
It was from the company that does, I can't think of the name, but it's a company that does St. Albans audit. But basically, the company that does their audit has been bought out by a much larger firm. And then that firm was like, basically, we're not even going to talk to you because we're not going to be competitive for your size. So They're probably trying to get away from doing what they're doing with St. Albans, if I had to guess, with that acquisition.
Remind me of the closing date, Carrie. I know I could find it. Do you remember?
I think it was like mid-March. We've got like a month still.
Okay, so that's definitely, I will post it on the state bid page. Yes, it's lovely and archaic.
If you have access, yeah. I just was like, I don't know what's going on this.
Yeah, I have permission. I just need to check because I do it for work, and so
okay.
I don't want anybody to see.
Or if you can like put me in touch with whoever would approve me, because I like made an account, but I don't think I have any like rights. You know what I mean?
Yes, I have also had an email exchange with her, and I don't, you know what? I'm not even sure my work account has been verified to post things. So I might have been just posting things just as a random ass person, but also I'll look into it. Anyways,
we can
talk that window of time. We can make it work, and just getting more, because that's definitely like, I mean, it's more local as in like statewide folks, but there are some like Arrhenius, like Massachusetts, and I know New Hampshire,
yeah.
and stuff, and look at that page. So top of my list, I will do that. So
Okay,
thank
thank
you.
you. And maybe tell
Yeah.
them all their numbers are out of service.
I'll let you do that.
And you said you sent, Carrie, you said you sent some directly. Was that from the list that we gave you?
Yeah, I think we sent like 6 or 7 directly, and I think all but the one that rejected us got it like via mail and via like an email or a contact submission. That one had just like kind of immediately rejected us. So I said, okay, I'm not gonna mail the letter.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Thank you, Carrie. I don't know if there's, I put the Vermont Bond Bank just because it was there last year, and not last year. Oh my gosh, I'm getting more tea right now. Last meeting. And it's all that an official letter was signed. Things are moving forward and looking good with the Vermont Bond Bank. I don't know if we need to go into more detail other than just like a little celebratory break, but
Carter, I can just give a 20-second overview. It's really quick. I signed the letter of intent on the city's behalf, and I understand that they are working directly with SPNF, and the attorneys, I think, plan to come to us. I don't think it's this week, right? They put it off. I think it's
After city meeting.
Yeah, we may have to have a special city meeting special council meeting in early March, because they need to have it done like a week in advance of the closing, which was the 17th or 18th of March. And unfortunately, we have a long stretch in there. So I think we'll probably have to, as soon as we have the new council seated, I'll call a special council meeting for that primary purpose, which I don't think will take very long. It's just a question of signing all the paperwork. So SPNF is on top of it, and as long as we stay on top of warning that meeting the first week of March, to do it the second week of March, we'll be fine.
And that was a requirement put out by the members of the bonding authority out of Boston, that they would not accept signatures of the current council because there's an election coming in the next 2 weeks. So they want it after the new council members are set at the table.
Yeah, thanks, Chip. Right. We initially intended to do it on the 23rd, this coming Monday, and then they wrote back and said, sorry, that's not going to work. So that's why we're in a little bit of a time. It doesn't change anything about the ultimate deadline.
No.
that's very aware of them. I'm kind of appreciative of that. Like, that makes me, they're checking all nooks and crannies and thinking about the whole picture before we, So, anyways, what were you gonna say, Lori?
So that's probably the 9th, Monday the 9th. Special meeting.
I don't know. I haven't even thought about it for a moment yet, but yes, I suppose it would be the logical fallback. Yep.
Great. Any other updates besides the 2 things that are pertinent for this group?
So they also added, if you will, an addendum that, like we are reporting to Passumpsic Savings Bank, the financial statements quarterly, the bond bank wants the same thing relative to this bond, quarterly updates of financials as presented to the city council. They added that.
Awesome. That will come up later when we talk about policies. Sounds like we're already writing into contracts that we're going to do these things, but that was one of the, anyways, not to jump ahead, but thank you. Okay. The next thing is, now that we've had some time to breathe, the CFDA proposal. So that group, just to jog folks' memories, we met with them actually before Thanksgiving. They had presented at a conference that piqued some ears in our local government, just because their skill set. And honestly, I've been inundated with emails from them, but that's because they do so much training, and they are they seem to be a group that works obviously across the state and a number of programs. And so I've just been like, oh, there they are again. Like, maybe they would really do know their stuff. And I've attended it was like a 3-part series about TIF, but also about CHIP. So they're very aware of the Vermont specific programs, because I was looking back through the proposal and I was thinking, none of these states besides New York, which is kind of an anomaly in New England, like they didn't list New Hampshire or Maine, or, but then just again, like their awareness and the fact that they're training other municipalities on some of these programs that we might use as financial tools has brought and kept them close in my mind. But I was curious to what others thought and maybe what our next steps would be, because I'm just one brain.
So Carter, I have a couple of questions about this. I agree. I think I've been getting a lot of those emails too. And actually, in my case, I agree with your assessment that what it says is they're really on their game and this is what they do. I'm trying to remember, because I haven't looked at it recently, what the cost of that proposal was expected to be.
$37,059 and like 2 cents or something silly. I know the breakout to hourly was like 2 cents. So
it was,
And
what was it? I'm sorry, say it again, Hal.
37,059.
Okay. So that makes me wonder if we need to actually do an RFP, because that's a pretty pricey item. So we probably ought to put together an RFP and put it out and let them bid on it, you know, consider theirs a bid or let them rebid on it if they wish, but I don't think we can just go ahead with it. Price tag like that.
Do we have an exception for a sole source? Because this is kind of a unique offering, I would assume. I don't know.
Yes, we do have an exception for a sole source that basically says if we are talking about something that is a unique skill set or, you know, qualification, the council can make a decision, I guess it's a council decision because it's an exception to the policy. The council can make a decision about that. So if we did a little research and discovered there's really nobody else that can put in a similar bid, I think that would be acceptable to take to the council as well.
Yeah,
and then the other thing I'd say about this is my expectation is that wherever we end up, whatever we pay, the likelihood is it would come out of the Walmart funds, unless, you know, I think it's worth the conversation with NVDA and maybe New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, Loan Fund, to see if they are sitting on any money that could help us with this if we had a match for half of it or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, but I think it's well worth it. Honestly, even at 40 grand, my suspicion is that they can help us to mobilize exponentially more money than that over the next decade if we put together a plan like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, oh, go ahead now.
No. I was looking at my questions as I went through the document last night. I was just kind of thinking about it.
I think my question as I read through it, just generally, is that the fact is, number one, they are very busy. So when we would ever get them to start is the thought. But since we're also have started the process of a city manager search, does it make sense to have a city manager on board before we undertake this project? Is that gonna, how do we feel about, I don't know, as I was reading this, I was thinking, you know, if I was coming into a city, you know, if this had been done now, like right now, and it was in place, and I was coming into a city where it was in place, it would be something I would work with. But I'm thinking about people who are looking at Newport and then seeing this and just, you know, playing devil's advocate here a little bit. Is there somebody out there that's going to go, oh, I do all that stuff, and, you know, now I'm coming into where they want this other group to come in, and how am I going to fit with them? It's just thoughts for conversation. I'm not swayed one way or the other. Just thoughts.
Yeah,
you know, Laura, go ahead, Carter. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say I have had those thoughts too, just generally, and I appreciate you bringing them up because you're right. It is like a larger context of where the city is going, and there's that huge kind of question mark, and we want to be flexible for that person. I have come and landed on the thought and the thinking that having this would be a really neat tool for this city manager, whomever they come in. And I've also been, I mean, I expect them to be organized and financially literate, but I'm not expecting them really to be an accountant. I'm more thinking that their skill set needs to be more administrative, like a kind of a leadership, people skills, basically. And so that's my thinking, is like, that's their strength and their skill set. That's who I would want to prioritize. And so if we had this, that would help round out and really make a really strong candidate or in-person position, that they would be like set up with this. And it also like would help them, because I don't know if they're going to know if they're going to come with like Southeast, skill set, or if they're going to be in the New England, like they're going to already know what's going on here. And so like that kind of helps me, like it levels the playing field a little bit. I feel like having this would be, but also the timing of it, if we put out an RFP, say it takes a couple months, just because it does, but before they get signed on and we sign contracts, it's looking at their timeline. It looks like maybe the city manager would actually be involved in some of these conversations, like where they are working with the community, and doing this kind of the outreach. It sounds like it's going to be 4 months after that. So maybe they will actually be involved and be part of that process. So those are my thoughts. Rick, what were you thinking?
I think you're saying what I would have said. Lori, I just want to say, I think the question you're asking is something we probably got to ask with every major decision we make for the next 4 months.
Yes.
And in this case, I think this is a specialized resource that is not likely to be something that someone just shows up with the knowledge of. And having said that, I think, Hal, I wonder if you have time or energy over the next couple of days where you could just do a little research to tell us if you think there are companies we have to solicit a bid from that are comparable to CDFA.
I can throw some time and energy in over the weekend in all probability.
That'd be great.
And
The council will be open to the answer. Yeah, we've looked and we don't think there's anybody out there who really will understand how to do this. And a sole source is a possibility in the policy. So, but let's do due diligence on it at least.
Yeah, and I remember. Oh, I have one more thought, and then I'll pass the mic to you, Anne, if that's okay. I do remember that they did wiggle on price a little bit, but I'm still wanting to do this research and making sure that we are being competitive. We are looking elsewhere, not just something that we saw, but doing that research I think is really important. So thank you, Hal, for taking that on, because I don't want to abuse that clause or at least appear that we're abusing it. But I think it's anyways. Okay, go ahead, Anne. What were you going to say?
I just wanted to check in and ask you to consider checking in with White and Burke and seeing how much of what this company is doing we're already paying White and Burke to do, or if we're not paying White and Burke to do this, or if they could do this, how much White and Burke would pay for doing a comparable thing. How much we would have to pay to get White and Burke to do a comparable thing, because you're paying, in my mind, they may be very good at what they do, I have no idea, but you're paying $3,000 a page for the 12 to 15 page document that they are going to produce for us as a result of all of their work. Now that may contain wonderful things, I don't know, but it's a lot of money per page. And what is the difference between what White and Burke is doing or could do for us and what this company is doing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I've had some conversation with Stephanie Clark about that. First of all, this is not covered in the White and Burke contract we currently have. Their contract really covers two things. One is to get us through the feasibility stage, which I certainly hoped would be done 6 months ago, and it's just been much harder to make the feasibility pieces come together, but I'm still expecting will happen by the end of this month or early March. And then assuming we have feasibility that recommends we move ahead, then they would help us through the application itself with the state for the tax increment financing district, or we've been interpreting that since the creation of CHIP, which happened after our contract with them was signed. They might help us forward with a CHIP application, or one or more CHIP applications, if that's the more feasible way to move forward. The what the skill is that's being offered here, the service that's being offered by CDFA is it's to look at our long range look at our long range capital planning, which certainly includes the downtown development piece, but also includes the fact that we've got to figure out what to do with our, updating our wastewater treatment facility. We've got projects for public works that have been on the books for quite a while that we haven't thought about yet. And it kind of looks at all of our big ticket spending that we expect to do around capital, and then says, now how can we help you put together a strategic finance plan that matches your capital needs? So it's a pretty specific skill set. So I actually met Toby, I think his name is, at the Whitenburg conference. He was the keynote leadoff speaker that day. And Stephanie puts that conference together. I mean, she brought him in to speak to that audience because she thinks that what they provide is such a critical resource to municipalities.
Yeah. So kind of looking, I like the idea here of what we're doing. And to your point, I kind of broke it down from their quote into hours. The cost per hour, $161 per hour, which for consulting and research is pretty inexpensive, relatively speaking. The output of 15 pages or 30 pages, I think there's going to be a lot more content there than just the 30 pages. There'll be a lot of ancillary stuff because I've dealt with these proposals. One of the things that when I was going through their stages that I did have some kind of specific questions on, and I didn't know if this was the time to kind of clarify those specific questions, because like in stage one, they were talking about having 3 2-hour virtual sessions. I would be interested in knowing what documentation they're going to need as part of that review process, because 3 2-hour sessions doesn't seem like enough to accomplish what they're looking for. So I'd want to know what kind of documentation or information they need to facilitate those conversations so that we get a lot of value out of them. And then that'll let us get an idea of how much effort is going to take on our team, because it's not like people are just going to show up and sit there and have 2 hours with no effort. I mean, we need to kind of know what kind of prep work we need to have in place to schedule that.
Absolutely.
The second stage where they were talking about stakeholders, I'd like to know who they consider representative stakeholders, because I think there's a couple of different audiences in the stakeholder situation. One, the city employees / government itself. I mean, obviously the stakeholder group. Two, the business community. How are they going to determine who represents part of the business community? And Pam, this is for you. How do we represent the community as a stakeholder group at large?
You are the community.
You guys have made it very clear. I'm the man. I'm part of the machine. So I just want to make sure that we're doing a good job there. So I'd like to understand, what are the stakeholder groups they want to identify, or they feel best supports these types of efforts, so we can make sure that we're making sure they're represented correctly. Because I don't want this done inside of an echo chamber. And then there's stage 3, they're kind of their product. Is it a good, better, best type of proposal, or a BHAG or big hairy ass goals? Like, are there BHAG goals, achievable goals, and then stretch goals? What is that result looking like? Because I think we need to understand in advance what kind of result we get, so we're comfortable with this.
Sound like great questions. Yeah. I've got them. I've noted them.
So that was like from my reading of this and what I want to know before I would feel comfortable putting ink to paper.
So Hal, if you could do that research this weekend and get back to us, then we could make a decision about whether we're going to recommend an RFP, which I think this group could just say, let's do it. I don't think we need council approval to ask for more information. Or if we're going to make a decision that really we're just going to go to the council and ask them to consider a sole source move on this one and move forward with this proposal with answers to questions.
Yeah. The other thing that I noticed, sorry, I had this down here because it was funny because and you asked about the $1,000 page, I was like, because I had broken it down, I was like, how much is this really costing per hour based on their estimate? I was concerned about that too. I didn't notice any references. Usually when someone's providing something like this, and I don't know if we did, it just dawned on me, I don't know if we did it on our RFP, any references that they can provide. There's no references provided here.
Right. They list like previous work that they've done, but there is no like contact them to see how it's going information. And we did include it on the audit RFP, if that's what
Okay.
you're talking about. Yeah, we did ask for references.
Well, if they provided with the past research and advisory service projects, you know, for places like Knoxville, Tennessee, and Phoenix, Arizona, and Louisville, Kentucky, I mean, who's to say that, you know, our city governance couldn't make a contact and say, hey, we're considering this. Would you be able to speak about how this has been implemented?
Yeah, I think more from a case of who to contact, because those are, you know, Knoxville's a big town. I mean, we could just be, you know, spitting into the wind there.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. And I bet, okay, so what I'm hearing is let's figure out if we need to put an RFP out for this. Let's take that step one. And then what we recommend to the council. And then if we are doing sole source, I think that these questions, we could phrase them that they're coming from the council if that makes the CDFA feel a little bit more like, okay, we should address these. Or we could probably just reach out in an email. But I think first step is like figuring out what our approach is, because I don't want to ask them questions and be like, oh, just kidding, we have to put it out an RFP. But I still think that those are really valuable facts to have and understand before we pursue a contract with them or another group that can perform this. Was that a hand?
Yeah, it's mine. How can you
yeah.
put that out from the council without having involved the council?
Oh, it would be involved. Like I would give updates and say, hey, these are lingering questions. I'm not trying to skip over them. I'm just saying, I don't know how they would like to interpret and what step we would be at that point. If we are, I don't want to take too much time, but just saying like, if we say after this research lesson or Hal is doing some investigation and we realize, oh, there are other companies like this. You know, I don't think it would be appropriate for me to then say, hey, the council has these questions, but we would put out an RFP. And then maybe our RFP actually asks these questions of like, how do you involve the community? Who are important stakeholders that are part of it? You know, we could maybe include that. But nonetheless, if CDFA, whenever we have that conversation, I would definitely have the rest of the council be aware and knowing these gaps that we need to know. So that's, I think, part of the task force is to help support and ask the questions that the council members don't necessarily have the bandwidth or skill set to do. So.
And I think it's and I totally understand what you're saying, Carter. You don't want to put these questions out to this group right now until we know whether we have to go out to others or not. If we don't, whether we just keep the conversation directly with them and not worry about it. But I hear what you're saying, because you don't want to ask too many questions and then they're going, oh, they're gonna sign this, and all of a sudden we go, thanks, but no thanks, you know. So I definitely want that. And of course, then, you know, I'm working really, really, really hard to put the past behind us. But every fiber of my being keeps going, okay, so we go through this, we spend, you know, $40,000, and then what? And I hate to keep going back there. But how many studies have we done that ended up on the shelf? I think we're on the right path to stop doing that. I just want to make sure. I think somebody said, if we reach out to these other cities, how did you implement this? What did you do moving forward? That's because we get stuck. We do a study, we think it's great, and then it sits. And I fully recognize that we're changing that paradigm for the good. I just want to put it out there and say, those are the questions. How did you implement this?
That was exactly what I was going to say, Lori, is like, okay, sounds like a reference check, but also like a value added check, right? Like, what did you actually gain from this? What's your process been like afterwards? Because yeah, I think that's another really crucial question.
Yep.
Yeah, because also, what if the product, I don't think that, but just as an example of like, we didn't even understand this. They didn't, like, part of the assessment could be, they didn't even really could talk with us. They talked to, like, to Hal's point, 3 people, and then they got this interesting data, and then we got this report and we haven't done it and we can't really use it. Like, that could be really eye-opening. Or it could be, oh, it was part of a multi-approach phase, and we used this one information, although it was overall helpful. Really, we only, we're able to functionally use portion of it. So it could just be a definite learning opportunity to ask those 2 questions instead of just like, how was it? Okay, bye. So. And
I don't mean to continue on this. That meeting last Monday night at the high school with, I was not sure, about the housing stuff. I was not sure how that was going to go. And I was totally amazed, number 1, at the number of people there. And number 2, at the questions that were the very pointed questions that were asked. And so that continues to reassure me that there are people in this community, even just outside of the voters of Newport, who want things to happen. And we just have to make sure that we're moving it in the right direction.
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing up that housing forum. That was very, informative sounds redundant, but it was eye-opening. Like, I sat next to Carrie and I was audibly like going like, wow, what? Like, what? Like, I thought I knew things. And then also how the speaker was able to handle those questions and reframe. You can tell he's very experienced with like the standard questions, but also some specifics that he didn't have slides for. He had to just like, oh, this is what this data means, Yeah, I overall was very moved. And that was, yeah. I came home and I showed my husband pictures of it. I was like, look at this data set. Look at that. Like, it was really cool. Yeah. Okay. So no. Okay. So the last thing I have on the agenda is to focus on what policies we want to address. And I listed 3. And I will kind of want to see how the folks like Carrie operate with this, and also like what Chip thinks is more pressing. I listed the trustee of public funds investment one first because that is vulnerability, an area that I know the least about. So I'm like, you know what? I'm curious, A, what exists in our city, B, what's standard, C, what this really all means. Because when we go through these funds and I hear that we can't touch them, I'm like, but I want to know more and educate myself. So that's why I listed that one first, but it might not be a priority and or an issue at all within the city, but nonetheless, it's part of this like packet that is model policy, and I think we should at least reference. So that's why I listed that one first. And then the second 2 are of recent topics that the city, because we set up a reserve fund for the water. I want to make sure I'm choosing my words correctly. We had a capital fund. Anyways, all of that has been recent and has been a question. So I just wanted to look at those 2 as well, because one's about the balance and the other one's just in general the setup and maintenance of it. So yeah, with all of that, I don't know if others had input or opinions that are more important than mine.
The only thing that I saw in this was at the bottom of it, there was, it seemed like we went from policy to like where we copied it, some of this information from, like buy a copy of this document and, you know, whatever. But if we're talking about how to invest money, usually anything that's held in a trust like this is supposed to be kept in a, you know, like a CD or cash equivalent type of account. So I didn't know if that's what the focus of this was. It's like, this has to be in a zero risk cash equivalent, you know, not stock type of thing. It has to be X, Y, and Z type of an account. Deal. That's when I've just read things on, you know, anything like a trust, or it has to be X term, you know, it has to be this type of thing. So a CD or a cash equivalent account, ideally earning interest, but not required. And that it can be, you know, it has to be, might be short term. So that was kind of the thing that I kind of noticed is this was, you know, I want to make sure that's just really clear. Strike a balance between risk and return. Now, I don't think we're really looking at risk and return. It's flat out cash. Chip, I see you nodding, so I feel like I'm vindicated.
So I have yet to see the so-called group that is known as the trustees of public funds. Typically, that's elected people to the position of trustee of public funds, and that the financials show all of the investments of the trustee of public funds, and that group has control over those investments and distributing those. And in the time that I've been working with the city, I have not seen any revenue nor expenditures related to the trustees of public funds.
Okay, so this doesn't have to do with the trust funds. It's like a separate thing that we aren't even playing with right now at the city.
I don't think you are. In most
Okay.
communities, actually, annually, there's at least one member of the trustees of public funds whose position and term is up as they rotate. And usually you have 3 people at a minimum that are the trustees of public funds. And they are the same 3 people constantly reelected once every 3 years. And I just haven't seen that in the city. And it could just be the trustee of public funds happens to be a guy named Jim. And he has all the accounts, the bank accounts, the investment accounts, and he's overseeing that as basically the treasurer of the city.
With regard to something that Carter said, I have tried because there is a statute, section 2804, which is referred to in another statute dealing with water and sewage. And it specifically said that if we wanted capital funds, they should go into a reserve fund established under section 2804. I've provided that statute and the water and sewer statutes, and I've provided the 2804 to the council and suggested that they needed this time around at the election to establish a section 2804 fund for water and sewer money to go into. I like this concept because in order to get money out of that fund, it's either got to be spent on water or sewer, or you've got to ask permission from the citizens to get money out of that fund. And it's funny that VLCT references 2804, talks about reserve funds, talks about how you set them up, talks about how you get money out if you're not using it for the purpose it was specified for. And I believe I heard from our mayor that the lawyer has, who is our city lawyer, said that that was not necessary. So it's odd that this issue comes up again now. And we do have from now until June 30th to establish a fund, but you'd have to have another election. So I'd like some comment on, is this the way we establish reserve funds, or is it not the way we establish reserve funds?
So it's true that the advice from our attorneys at SPNF is that their reading of the statute does not suggest that we are in a position where we need to create that fund at this point, that they think we're managing it managing the capital reserve question appropriately. So I'm not, at this point, unless something more compelling comes up, I'm not interested in trying to press that issue, certainly between now and the end of the fiscal year with a special election. If this group of people, that is to say this task force, does kind of a deep dive on the question of how trustees are appointed and what they're responsible for, and they want to come back with some recommendations for the council's consideration, then I think I'm certainly open to that. My understanding is that, or at least part of my understanding, leaving aside the question of the capital reserve funds, my understanding is that in general, if somebody, look at the town of Woodstock that's got, I can't remember which Rockefeller type family they're sitting on money from, but it's one of them, right? They're sitting on huge amounts of money. And the question of being trustees of a fund like that is a far different question. And I would love us to be in that position. I've thought a lot actually over the last year about how wonderful it would be if we could begin to establish some long-term investment, a portfolio that's made up of legacy gifts from members in this community who care about the community. And I would think at that point, you clearly would want some kind of a trustee arrangement, because that can, as Chip just said, that can endure over time and bring some stability to the management of a fund like that and the decisions around a fund like that. But I think that's part of this conversation that actually really interests me, is how do we set ourselves up for that? I've opened that conversation with Dan Smith from the Vermont Community Foundation, but have not yet pursued it in any significant way.
Right. When I have conversations with other municipalities in our region, I pick up here and there that they have a CD account and that they manage this. And when I hear that, I'm like, wow, but that's exactly where, and because we have gotten the question of how can a donor help out the city? And if we had a system in place, if we had folks that were elected to handle that, that feels a lot better of an answer than probably most people assume writing a blank check, that investment would continue and carry on. And so just to completely make it very abundant that Carter clearly needs a 5-year-old explanation of, the Pearls Niley Fund and the Cemetery Fund, those are separate than what this is talking about and addressing. Those are supposed to be under the purview of Jim Johnson, the town clerk, or / whomever the town clerk treasurer is. And this is more of an investment, hopefully seeded by some lovely donors in the community. And so those are just separate things.
No, they're both the same.
So
they're both the same. So if the money is held under the federal ID of the city, but it is bequeathed for a purpose, then that management of the investment, the spending of the revenue generated by that investment, if it's allowed, fall under what would be a group of trustee of public funds. Funds that are left to the city that are not tax oriented.
So this is always sits right here in my head. So that, I'm guessing, would also include the $40,000 we took in as bond, 30, 40 years ago, that's been sitting in a nothing investment account for the property known as the Pepin Pit for reclamation, whenever that takes place. Jim knows where that is. It's in a bank account. In 40 years, it's earned a couple $1,000s. and it's not to be used until that closes. So I guess that falls under the same thing. Because it
Yes.
was taken in bond for a particular purpose.
Yes. And I actually think asked that question, and I have yet to see, I know the bank statement does exist. I don't think it's been added to the financials. I'm not even sure that the auditors know about it.
Yep.
But I pursued it two or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know that 40 grand bank account. I was trying to remember, because I asked him, does it have the city's EIN on it? And the answer was yes. And I said, then it is part of the financials.
That's right.
And I don't know that has been resolved and put on the financials yet. I don't think it has.
No, to the best of my knowledge, it hasn't. I have the same question, Chip. And, it points to why a clear policy that is reviewed by the council on a regular basis is important. Because, we end up in these situations where a group of trustees who have been around forever, but don't feel any particular responsibility to report back to the council, are in charge of something, and there may be an entirely separate bank account out there that they're messing with. So there absolutely should be a clear policy that links those two realities. The check and balance in the system is that the trustees are responsible, but they also are obligated to report to the council about what their decisions are.
Yes. But like I said, I'm not even sure that you have a group known as the Trustees of Public Funds.
No.
It's not on a
So-
ballot.
Nope.
Yeah. So Carter, I think this is a question that if we could explore through the spring together, I don't think there's urgency in it, but it's obviously been this way for a long time. And we've got a lot of things that we're working on, but it's something we should absolutely be paying attention to, so that if we go to, I assume we'll be doing an election in November, obviously. So there's no reason we couldn't come back with some recommendations to council about items to go on that ballot.
Yeah, I like that opportunity, and I just feel validated that it's like a blind spot of mine, but it turns out I was.
Yeah, you're not alone.
So, all right, great. I will look. Yeah, glad to listen to my gut there. Okay, all right. Well, look at that, we're cruising.
So the reserve fund policy that you had listed second, and I believe Ann, in all her research, proved the fact that the public voters have never voted to establish any reserve fund ever. And so whether you have the policy or not, it's actually not recommended to establish reserve funds by public vote, because if you read the policy, it says you must renew that obligation annually by a voted article. And it doesn't explain the out of the reserve fund should the article not pass the second year and there's money still held in reserve.
Mhm.
Doesn't explain how you get the hell out of there now. So when I asked the city council to establish a series of funds, those are for accounting purposes, but from an audit standpoint, all that money is still combined into the general fund when they report the general fund balances and restrictions. And they are committed by council, not committed by anybody else. The exception to that is the reappraisal fund, because that is funded by statute and those monies are meant with purpose by the state government. The second one is the restoration fund, established by the state of Vermont, $4 per page to be set aside for every page recorded in your vault. So those were not recognized, in my humble opinion, by the previous audit as being intentional and must maintain a balance. So those do qualify as as restricted funds by an outside source. The rest of those that we have established are for accounting purposes only, established to help city council track how much money they have set aside, which previously was done by spreadsheet. So the cautionary tale of what is a reserve fund? Do we want a policy? Do we want to create? If we have 8 reserve funds, every single city meeting, we're going to vote on 8 articles to continue those funds. Because that's what the policy has presented states must happen. It's only good for 1 year at a time.
Chip,
So-
can you reference where you're getting that information about the 1 year at a time from?
Right out of that reserve policy as it was presented.
By statute?
Reference, VLCT references the statutes in there.
It almost sounds like this is a pull pin when you need to throw the grenade scenario here. So unless we have a need for this, does it make sense to instigate something like this?
Right, which is why city council says, city council as in SPNF, says, yeah, don't start this. You're managing your funds, if you will, your reserves. You're managing those through your budget process as it is. And still there's the misnomer when the public hears the term fund. They associate that to something called a bank account. And we have seen the result of bank account accounting.
Yeah.
Okay. So looking to when to meet next. I don't see a need or pressing need to meet next week. And also we'll have family in town and I'm really excited about that. So, and then the following is the day after elections. So I guess that would be a good time to debrief celebrate if the budget passed or what our plan B if the budget doesn't pass. I think I think that's a good date to keep and hold. So March 4th at 8 a.m. Does that work with folks?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, the agenda might be a little loosey-goosey because
Do we have anything necessary for city council to take action on at the next meeting? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I can report out that we'll look into this trustee business and then also how I might bug you on Monday day to see if what you found or if it looks like we're going in one direction or the other for the RFP, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'll do some research on who their potential competitors are. I'll also look at some of the key people there and see where they came from and see if that looks like viable competitors.
Right.
And do we know if the downtown is a federal tax credit area where private investment can take federal tax credits if they
Yes,
invest?
you're talking about the REAP zone?
Yes.
Yes, we are a REAP zone.
Okay. Because that's what I have typically seen for someone interested. They hire an engineering service who then manages the whole project, including the federal tax credit process on behalf of the investor, which may or may not want a public share in the investment through a community development block grant. And so often, if you've already got the known quantity that wants that, in my experience, that's what I've seen in both Brattleboro and Bellows Falls, is that the commitment on the part of the municipality was to authorize the application for a community development block grant in concert with the tax credit program being done by the private company that is going to do the investment. And I know that there's been housing done in Bellows Falls. There was a commercial space developed in Brattleboro, and they didn't did not have an external paid by local government organization that was managing the project.
Yes to all of that. That's all my understanding too, Chip.
So the city may trying to be court somebody who wants to take advantage of that tax credit process. And then the cost to the city is really an application for a community development block grant.
Yeah. Carter, Carrie and I just wanted to give a quick update on the credit card. I would have said in the past that the company is moving with glacial speed, disappearing faster than this company is moving at this point. So we engaged them in a much more aggressive way in the last 3 weeks. I started reaching out myself and saying, I need a follow-up, and they responded quickly. But then I still wasn't satisfied with the timeline they were giving us, and I wrote back and said, just to be clear, we need these credit cards in place before our summer season begins. So we need to be done this by roughly middle or end of April. And the assurance we got back was that it is moving in a way that will make that happen by then. I don't understand why this takes so long. There's no logic in it. But just so you know, Carrie and I are on top of it and watching it and trying to figure out how to push it as fast as we can, because we're still functionally upstairs, at least, without a credit card. The PD's got a credit card they can use, but Rec, Carrie's office, my office, and as a mayor and also a city manager and also as public works, none of us have access to credit right now.
Oh. Well, thank you for writing that. What were you saying, Pam or Ann?
That makes absolutely zero sense. If a quote regular citizen activates a credit card, it's instant. This makes no sense. If you have an agreement, there must be something else going on.
Well, that's what I said, Pam. I agree with your assessment, and we're pushing as hard as we can. I don't know what else to do. We don't have any other companies lining up, beating our door down to be a municipal credit card company for us. So we're going to keep pushing this one, and they're assuring us that we'll have it in a reasonable length of time.
Who are the other municipalities using?
This came as a recommendation from another municipality.
Yeah, this is actually, St. Albans was the one who said, if you can get into this company, this is the best one to use. So
It would be worth finding out who other areas use.
Believe me when I tell you, we did that. We did due diligence. We tried to find a number of companies. This was the only one. Carrie had 2 on the hook back in the fall. This was the one that was willing to play with us. And it just never occurred to me that it would be a 5-month-long project to get it actually established. But that's apparent. Just to be clear, apparently it is in fact not uncommon for this to take that long for a municipality. So all I can tell you is we're on top of it. We're working on it and pushing as hard as we can.
Can I raise?
Go ahead.
Can I raise another subject for another time, which is we've had a tax stabilization recently, and my concern is that if we ever go for a chip or a TIF, and then a company wants as well to get tax stabilization, they work against each other. And I would think that this group could at least suggest a policy for whether or not you should be able to get a tax stabilization simultaneously with a TIF or a chip. I don't mean to use your name in vain.
It's
a lot of people have a TIF with me too, so that's not a problem.
I'm sorry.
A lot of people have a TIF with me too, so that's not a problem.
I have a TIF with Chip.
Excellent.
It's worth asking the question, and I haven't read the policy at the state level carefully to know what the ins and outs are if you accept a chip or if you establish a TIF district. I think you're probably right that it still goes through the town. The town makes those decisions, and that it would be smart for us to have a good policy in place.
Right.
All right. And there's something on that agenda for the 4th. There we go. All right. Thanks everybody for your time this morning. Hope you guys get out and enjoy the sun. And yeah, I'll see you guys around. And then, or in a couple
Thanks,
weeks, go out and vote. I'll see you maybe on voting day. How about that?
Rick, are you looking for financials for the next council meeting?
Why don't you stay on for just a second? Let's talk about that.
I guess.
See y'all.
See you.